Nice. There it is.
So
Okay, yeah. So now we'll do the um so I think those two questions in my mind so are just really, we're still on the cover.
I
We
love
haven't
it.
made it past the cover, Matt, which is fine. Um so I think one of the things that I talked to you about last time is like I just want to kind of hear from you. So like um explaining what's going on in the book, which I think is useful, but I'm just curious sometimes just to hear your thoughts about, and I know the book are your thoughts too, but just to kind of say like if we were in conversation, right? It's not about like, it's not really about a chapter walk through the book as much as just like let's just kind of share what's in Matt's head um around some of these topics. But yeah, on the cover, so again, the title, Inklings on Philosophy and Worldview. And last time, like we talked a little bit about worldview and what that means, but then a new way of learning about our connections to truth and reality. Um, and I don't want to talk about this now, but I am also intrigued by the worst, just the use of the word connections
Yeah, I
too.
know you caught that last
Yeah, I
time.
was like, that's interesting. That's an interesting choice. But so I think the two things I'd like to talk about now would be, one is just to hear from you, like, what do you mean when you say truth? Because that's obviously in the realm of philosophy, that's a very big word. And then reality. And even if you could just start with like the philosophical word, the actual like type, the word that we use within philosophy to talk about reality. Uh, but that's really what I'd like to talk about. Is like, what do you mean when you say truth, and what do you mean when you say reality? And then I think we'll already, when you talk about reality, let's actually dive into the book. Like, let's talk about your four categories, right?
I think
So
it's a great idea.
yeah, so let's start with that first question. Is like, when you say our connections to truth, what do you mean at that point by that word truth? In like three sentences or less.
You know, the reason why I put the word connection, I don't want to necessarily go there.
Yeah.
We'll save that one. It's a good one. I love that you went at that. But I wanted it to be about like you and I are connecting right now. We're living, breathing beings connecting.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation. There's a relationship. And what I wanted to imply was that we can have a relationship with truth. And we actually do have a relationship with truth. And so when we think philosophically, we can take this back thousands of years. Um, I mean, Veritas, right? We have Pilate standing in front of Jesus and asking, what is truth? And I write about this in the book, but just you and I right here, that moment is what inspires me.
Hmm.
You have someone saying, what is truth? Concept. Did I get the correct answer on a test? Is someone telling me a lie or is they telling me the truth? I mean, I don't want to drag it into it, but like the whole concept of fake news implies that there's real news and false news. There's real miracles and false miracles. There's real prophetic words, false. There's real science. Like we could just keep going, like accurate, not accurate, and but to what? It implies a standard, and it implies accuracy, and it implies something that you can um, verify, which then kind of brings the tension back in. Well, if everything's based off of trust and we can't verify anything 100% with 100% certitude, but we're all trying to find the truth, there's the tension. But that's what I want us to embrace. Is I want us to embrace that tension, right? And so we have Pilate, what is truth? And we're trying to figure out the concept and the standard and the thought, the information that's true. But then you have a man in front of him who is claiming to be the truth. He's not there to tell the truth. He is the truth. When I mean that that's a crazy statement. I am the truth, the way, and the life. And so that's why I put that on there is, am I connecting with some abstract concept? Or if Jesus Christ is the truth, well, then I can connect with a person very differently than information. So that's why I was leaning into the word connection, and why this book is like, I grew up looking for the correct answer, the correct statement, the correct philosophy, the correct religion, the right verses, the correct morality. I wanted all the true stuff and all the true information. And Jesus even says to the Pharisees, you scouring the scriptures, looking for the truth, looking for salvation, yet you fail to come to me. And so when you have that sentence in this book, right? We were kind of talking about that in the other session as well. Like the worldview that it takes to just take the Bible seriously is its own issue, right? But then philosophically, part of me was to say not even religiously, philosophically, it's that great question. What is truth? And then what is true? And then I add in there, well, who is truth? Because if it's a living, breathing being as a standard of truth, that's a whole nother bag of questions. I don't want to just keep going because I feel like I just could keep talking and talking and talking. Thoughts on that? How does that hit you?
I mean, I think it's good. My initial thought when I took note of the word connection was simply to say, like, that's a great, that's a good word choice, right? So it's not about determining, it's not about knowing or understanding. Usually, like, from in a philosophical frame, it's like we're here to define it, right? And so I think for you to say, look, it's back to my point of, like, so much of what I appreciate about what you're doing is simply just saying awareness. Like, so do you have a connection that looks like awareness to these discussions?
Yeah.
Do you have a connection? And so you're even making the point, connection to a person or the person. Yeah. But anyways, I just thought it was an interesting word choice, so I was curious to hear what you thought. So the you know, like but to hold the line, so you're sort of making that statement, like, that in your case the person of Christ is the truth?
I'm going to run with that. What I'm inviting people into in this text is seeing Jesus Christ as the fullness, and now this is the reality part. So the truth, which is the fullness of reality. And then the book talks about that with the four worldviews in part 1, 2, and 3 on Chesterton's quote saying that we've torn the soul of Christ, we've torn the truth, the full truth, into silly strips, right? And so there's something to be said for having a truth, right? And then having the truth. And I can have true statements about Jack, but that's not all of Jack. Those are true things. So I think it's interesting too, like, where do we find the difference between some of the truth and all of the truth? And what happens when you have some true things, but not all true things? Well, then is that gap, does that create a lie? Is that a falsehood? Is that a shadow? Is that a hole to fill? I find that discussion intriguing because that plays into what I'm doing here. But I think there's a difference between I get true statements about Jack. I don't have all of the truth about Jack. But then there's also a difference between, like, lies about Jack.
Yeah.
And for me to say that Jack, has bleached blonde hair and is 6'8", it's just not true.
Right.
Or Or can we find a way to like, well, no, but if you see it from this perspective, it is. And that's what philosophy is trying to wrestle through is,
Hmm.
is existentially our perception of reality, our truth. Well, I can't negate your perception. Like it's your perception. But what we can discuss, and this is what I want to push for, can we lovingly discuss, honestly discuss, and discuss with dignity and integrity. We talked about this before, gentleness and respect. The fact that my perception of the world could be either partial or potentially even inaccurate, like not a not true perception. But that implies that there is a standard for reality, which then goes into that next question. Well, what's real? What's really real? And so not, I feel like we're trying to like navigate those, but then the implication is that if Jesus is the truth, then people who say that he's not, they can't be correct at the same time as I like. Does that make sense? Like there is a sense of logic and the law of non-contradiction, but then also just a perception of reality, right? Oh, let me do one quick example. Classic one that I bump into with my students, and just kind of generally speaking. Um, and I love that the students often bring up ghosts. You know, we go to a haunted house, or we just go to an old house in the woods, and we're all like on a hike, and then someone says, "But there could be a ghost in there." Well, either there is, and that's accurate, or there's not. But can we have them either? Can we have both of those at the same time? No, so one of those is accurate, one of those is true. But if I don't believe in ghosts and I walk in the house, just because I don't believe that ghosts are real and that they're not true, it's not true that they exist, does that negate their existence? But we talked earlier about the filter of it. So Jesus says, I am the truth to Pilate. But Pilate's worldview does not allow God to be incarnate in a person as the truth. So is he going to buy that? Is he going to go for it? Well, no. So if he doesn't have that perception of Jesus as being the truth, is all of a sudden Jesus just not the truth? Or is his perception what we would call inaccurate or false? Can I have a conversation with Pilate about that? Because it's all going to lead back to what he's trusting and what his worldview is, and then mine. But can I prove him wrong? Can he prove me wrong? Well, no, and that's the conversation that we're having. That I don't know if that extended or if I went on another rabbit trail or went backwards there, but that's what's rolling through my brain as we talk about this is truth.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that one, these discussions philosophically and even within the realm of religion are old. They're
Yeah,
not new.
yeah.
What again, what I say I like about your book is the call to awareness. Are you aware? um but like this subjective objective truth is not a new discussion. But it's one of those ones that you can tell the people who haven't had it.
Yeah.
Like you can
True.
tell the person who's certain that their perspective on life is the truth and everyone else's is wrong. So that's the person that. But the other piece I like about the book is like, look, um we have to move forward in this world, and you're saying, hey, I've made some decisions about what I believe about the truth, and then now I think it's the way to go. I think, to your shredded metaphor, it's the full cloth.
Yeah.
It's not, you feel certain or confident that you are looking at either the full cloth or the pieces reassembled in the most satisfying way or
Yeah.
robust way possible. So how do you know that? And so that to me starts to get into like the reality question.
Yeah.
So like maybe this talk about that for a little bit, because this is definitely an ebb and flow. It's not like, hey, we're going to define truth and never revisit that.
Yeah.
nor are we going to define reality. I mean, philosophy has not answered either of these questions in a manner satisfactorily to everyone yet. So I don't know if you will, but this is back when this is what I love about this. One, are we aware of these discussions and how we're making choices and actions, sometimes in an unaware way, but also to say, like, you've made this choice and you feel confident in it. How do you know? Well, what makes you feel confident in this? And so I think that's where this book in some ways goes, is if you're always afraid to look at it, that's not a good thing. You can also look at it in a way that really undermines and makes you scared and confused.
Yeah.
This is a way to look at it, to really look at it and come out the other side feeling as if you can engage with people who think differently than you, but also feel confident, not just to have the discussion, but to go forward in the world, right? Like we have to move forward. We can't just sit still. So and I also know, like, some people have never had the conversation about what is reality.
Yeah.
Like, that's dumb. I'd tell you what's reality, what I see. That's, so like even that discussion is a lot of people have not had, right? So let's jump into that a little bit. So
Yeah. Len, let me,
yeah,
as we jump in, like we're on the edge of the diving board, right? Lewis
yeah,
loved the diving metaphor. Like as we dive into that, I kind of like think let's cannonball it. Like let's just go for it, because I tell my students this, and often they're like, "Wait, what?" I because I'm confident on what I believe. Like you were saying, I trust this. I'm confident. I've vetted it. I've had conversations, and yes, I'm trying to invite more people to talk about it. But let's do it in a loving, safe way. And here's a way to do that. But I think there's something to be said. Like I got right now, as far as I'm aware, I've got one life to experience. Right? There is a sense of practicality to part of why we do philosophy and why we jump into worldview is we got one life, and you know what? I want it to be full. I want to make the most of it. If joy is real and it's available, I want to experience some joy. Um,
mhm,
Everybody I see has to navigate a lot of pain and suffering. Well, it seems like there's better ways to do that than others, right? I
yeah,
if there's a God available who can help me in the suffering or alleviate the suffering or bring a miracle, I don't want to miss out on that. Does that make
yeah,
sense? And so,
yeah,
but also if none of that's real, I can say this sincerely, Jack, like brother to brother. If this whole Christianity thing is a farce, I want to be the first to know. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
if I'm totally off and totally blind to this, well, let me know. Like, I want to at least figure that out so that I can go with the truth. And I
yeah,
want the truth. You and I both know that there is a deep freedom in the truth, even if it's a painful truth.
yeah.
Having the truth, there's incredible freedom that comes with that. So I think that's part of the launching in is this is a journey of discovery. It's an adventure. None of us can fully verify it. So let's figure out what's really working and what's really trustworthy. And I like that approach to this because it keeps me open for figuring out what's going to help us have the most fulfilling, fruitful life as it's moving along, as the days I keep waking up each day. Is that fair? Like, I feel like that's an important thing to acknowledge is let's make the most of the life that we have. And philosophy can help us do that by figuring out what's really trustworthy and what's working and what works best. Now that begs that other side to that. Well, I'm only going to do it based off of the outcomes, not what's actually true. But this is where I would love to ask back. I believe that the truth will help us have the most satisfying outcomes.
I mean, it's hard to disagree with that I mean, it's like, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
You um if you're operating on mistruth, that's at some point that's, like, whatever, that foundation will crumble or it will be gone. yeah, so it's better, I would argue, it's better to know the truth even when it's painful than to be operating on mistruths. Yeah.